Welcome back to Beyond the Bottle, wines past, present, and future. I'm so glad we're continuing this journey. And man, that first part, right?
I know, so much to unpack.
Really fascinating stuff, all that history. Did you know wine was in ancient Mesopotamia?
Yeah, and Egypt, Greece too, and those religious ceremonies. I mean...
It's incredible. Before we move on to today's talk...
oh, yes. We should definitely mention our friends at the Essence of Travel and Discoveries. They've been such a valuable resource for this.
Absolutely. And for our listeners...
Yes, just a reminder, they don't actually sell wine. They're more about education and information.
Exactly. Okay, so last time we went way back in time, exploring all that history.
Yeah.
But now I'm kind of ready to get a little more...
practical.
Yeah, practical. Because let's be honest, most of us, we experience wine with something else. Food.
You're so right. I think, that whole connection between wine and food, it goes way deeper than just like, oh, red wine with meat, white wine with fish.
Oh, I totally agree.
There's so much more to it. In fact, and this might surprise you,
Okay.
wine is actually considered a food itself.
Wait, really? I've never thought of it like that. How could a drink be a food?
Well, think about it. Wine has nutrients, just like, anything else we eat, and fermentation. That process, well, it's actually very similar to what happens in our bodies when we digest food.
Okay, wow, that's pretty mind-blowing. So are you saying wine can actually help with digestion?
It can actually, especially those tannins in wine. They can bind with proteins, and that can really make digestion easier, especially after like a big steak dinner.
Makes sense. So next time I have a heavy meal,
Exactly.
I'll keep that in mind. I've always been so curious about pairing wine with food.
Oh, it's an art.
It is. But is it like a real science or just personal preference?
Well, it's actually both. Of course, everyone has their own tastes, but there's some really interesting science behind why some wines and foods just, they work so well together.
Okay, so it's not just people being snobby when they talk about the perfect pairings.
No, not at all.
There's real chemistry happening.
Yeah, like think about a big, bold red wine with a juicy steak. The tannins in the wine cut through that richness of the meat, and then those fruity notes in the wine, they complement all those savory flavors.
Okay, yeah, I get that.
And then same with a chilled white wine and a delicate fish. That acidity in the wine, it just enhances the fish, doesn't overpower it.
So it's all about balance.
Exactly.
But what about those, kind of crazy pairings you hear about? I once saw a chef pair champagne with fried chicken. How does that work?
Now that's where things get fun. You see those bubbles in the champagne cut through the fattiness of the fried chicken, and then the acidity balances out all that richness. It's a surprising combo, but it really, really works.
See, this is why I love wine. Like, there's always something new.
Right.
Something to discover, and all these little surprises that make you appreciate it even more.
And it pushes us to be more adventurous with our food, too. Try new things.
Absolutely. Speaking of new things, can we talk about wine labels for a second? Because honestly, sometimes I get so lost.
I hear you.
Trying to choose a bottle. All those terms, the regions, all the different grapes. It's intimidating.
It can be. But don't worry, you're definitely not alone there. Figuring out a wine label can feel like learning a whole new language, but once you get the basics, it gets much easier. Trust me, it's worth taking the time to learn, because then you can really choose wines you're going to enjoy.
Okay, I'm ready. I'm ready to unlock the secrets. What are the key things we should look for when we're staring at that wall of wine?
First things first, don't panic.
Okay.
It's easy to get overwhelmed. But just remember, choosing wine should be fun.
Yeah, right.
And hey, don't be afraid to ask for help. The staff at your local wine shop,
Oh, yeah.
they're usually really happy to give you some recommendations.
That's good advice, because I always feel a little awkward asking for help, like I should already know everything.
I know what you mean, but most of those wine experts, they really love to share their knowledge and passion. So next time you're at the store, just ask. It can really change how you experience wine.
Okay, good point. I'll try that. So besides asking for help, what else can we do? How do we navigate all those wine labels?
Well, the first thing is understanding the basic parts of a wine label, like the region,
Okay.
the grape variety, and the vintage.
Right.
Each of those things gives you really valuable clues about the style of the wine, the flavors, and even the quality.
So it's like a puzzle.
Kind of, yeah.
Okay, well, let's break it down. I'm ready to become a label reading expert.
I love your enthusiasm. Let's start with the region. It really is. The region of a wine is kind of like, well, its birthplace. It tells you a lot about the climate, the soil, even the traditions of the winemakers.
So, like how a coffee from Ethiopia will taste different from one from, say, Colombia.
Exactly. Different regions have their own unique character. Like, think about France.
Oh, yeah, France.
You've got Bordeaux, known for its Cabernet Sauvignon and Merlot. Those wines tend to be, well, bolder, more structured. Then you have Burgundy, famous for Pinot Noir, which are often lighter and more elegant.
So just knowing the region can give you a starting point.
Yeah, it's a great foundation.
Okay, that's helpful. Now, what about the grape variety itself?
Ah, yes, this is where things get really exciting. Each grape has, its own personality, and that really shines through in the wine.
So, like knowing the main character in a story. If it's a Pinot Noir, you kind of know what to expect.
That's a great analogy. Like Pinot Noir is known for those delicate red fruit flavors, cherry, raspberry, and a really silky texture. But Cabernet Sauvignon, that's a whole different story, much bolder with those dark fruit flavors, black currant, plum, and a much more robust structure.
Gotcha. So understanding these details can really help you pick a wine you'll like. Okay, we've got region, great variety. What about vintage?
The vintage is the year the grapes were harvested. And this is where things can get tricky because vintages, they're not all created equal. Mother Nature has a big say in this one.
So a good year means better wine. Is that it?
Generally, yes. Weather during the growing season is so important. A warm and sunny year, you get those ripe, flavorful grapes, leading to richer, more complex wines. But if it's a cool, rainy year, well, the grapes might not have as much sugar or acidity, so the wine might be lighter bodied.
Okay, that makes sense. So how do we know which vintages are good? Do we need to like memorize a bunch of dates?
Haha, no need to memorize everything. There are tons of resources, online, wine publications. They have these vintage charts, ratings for different regions. But honestly, don't get too hung up on vintage.
Really? Why not?
Well, it's important, sure, but it's not the only thing that determines how good a wine is. There's also the winemaking techniques, how the wine was stored, and even just your personal taste. Plus, some wines are best young while others need to age. It's a whole world of complexity.
Right. Focus on the whole picture, not just one year. Got it. Thinking about all this, the regions, grapes, vintages, it really makes you appreciate how complex wine is.
It really does.
It's not just a drink, it's a reflection of so many different things.
It connects us to history, geography, culture, even science.
Exactly. Like every bottle has its own story. So now that we've cracked the code of the label, let's talk about actually tasting wine. Is there a right way to do it, or is it all just personal preference?
It's a bit of both, honestly. Like most things in the wine world, there are some, I guess you could say, guidelines, but in the end, it's really about what you enjoy. But I'm happy to walk you through the basic tasting process. It can really help you appreciate all those nuances in a wine.
Perfect. Let's do it. So first step.
First, just take a moment to look at the wine.
Okay.
Hold your glass up to the light, see the color, how clear it is. The color can actually tell you a lot about the grape and how old the wine is.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like a young white wine will be that pale straw color, but an older one might have more of a golden hue.
So even the color tells a story.
Absolutely. Now next comes the swirl.
The swirl, okay.
Gently swirl your wine in the glass. This helps to release the aromas, aerolate it.
Okay, yeah, I've seen people do that, but I always thought it was just for show.
Not at all. Swirling is super important because, believe it or not, smell is a huge part of how we taste.
Wow, really?
Oh yeah, scientists think that up to 80% of what we perceive as taste actually comes from our sense of smell.
That's amazing. So swirling unlocks all those hidden flavors.
Exactly. Now that you've swirled, bring the glass to your nose and take a nice deep breath.
Okay.
Try to pick out different scents. Do you smell fruits, flowers, spices, maybe even some earthy notes? And don't be afraid to get creative with how you describe them.
This is the part where I usually just say it smells like .wine. I'm not very good at all the fancy descriptions.
Don't worry, it takes practice. Just start by focusing on one or two main aromas. Is it fruity, floral, spicy? Once you got those, then you can try to find those more subtle notes.
Okay, I'll try to be more mindful. What's next?
Now for the main event, the taste.
My favorite part.
Take a sip, let it cut your palate. Really pay attention to those flavors, the texture, and the finish, that lingering sensation after you swallow.
Okay. But are there like specific things we should be looking for in terms of taste and texture, I mean?
Oh, for sure. When you're tasting wine, you want to think about sweetness, acidity, tannins, and body. Sweetness is, well, how much sugar is left in the wine. Acidity gives wine that refreshing quality. You feel it as a sort of tingling on your tongue.
Oh yeah, I know that feeling. Like a little zing.
Exactly. Then there are tannins. These are compounds in grape skins, seeds, and stems, and they give wine that astringency, that dryness. You'll feel tannins as a puckering sensation, kind of like when you drink black tea.
So that's what tannins are. Do some wines have more than others?
Yes, red wines usually have more tannins than whites, and the amount can vary depending on the grape, how the wine was made, and how old it is. Tannins actually soften over time, so older reds tend to have a smoother texture.
Wow, so much to think about. It's like a whole science experiment in your mouth. Okay, so we've got sweetness, acidity, tannins. What about body?
A body refers to how the wine feels in your mouth, the weight, the fullness. You'll hear it described as light, medium, or full-bodied. Light-bodied wines are delicate, refreshing, while full-bodied wines feel richer, heavier.
I'm starting to get it now. So although these things, color, aroma, taste, texture, they all work together to create the whole experience.
Exactly. And don't be afraid to just play around, experiment, try different wines, compare them, figure out what you really like.
Great advice. This is all so fascinating. I feel like I'm already tasting wine on a whole new level. But before we finish this part, I have one more question. We've talked a lot about pairing wine with food, but what about pairing wine with, well, occasions? Does that matter?
That's a great question. And yes, absolutely, the occasion can totally change your wine choice. It's about the mood you're going for. Is it a celebration, a casual hangout, a quiet night in?
Right, you wouldn't serve the same wine for a romantic dinner and a backyard barbecue.
Exactly. For a romantic dinner, you might go for something sophisticated, like a Pinot Noir or a Barolo. But for a barbecue, something light and fun, like a Sauvignon Blanc or a Rosé, would be perfect.
Okay, so how do we know which wines are right for which occasions? Is there like a cheat sheet?
There aren't any hard and fast rules, but there are some general guidelines. Sparkling wines like Champagne or Prosecco, those are classic for celebrations.
Makes sense.
Light-bodied whites like Sauvignon Blanc or Pinot Grigio, those are super refreshing and go with almost anything, perfect for casual get-togethers.
And what about reds?
Well, lighter reds like Pinot Noir or Gamay, they're very food-friendly, good for a lot of different settings. But if you have a big, bold red, like a Cabernet Sauvignon or Syrah, those are usually reserved for special occasions or paired with heartier meals.
This is all so helpful. I'm starting to feel like I can actually choose wine now. It's not so scary anymore.
That's great to hear. The key is just to keep exploring and, most importantly, enjoy it.
I will. I can't wait to continue exploring in our next part. But for now, I think I need a glass of wine to, process all this.
I'll cheers to that.
Man, we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive. From the ancient world to modern pairings, it's been a wild ride.
It has. It's funny to think wine, it's basically just fermented grape juice, but obviously there's so much more to it than that.
So much more. And I think what's really surprised me is just how much science is involved in every step of the way. Like the grapes themselves, how they're grown, the fermentation, the way the flavors develop. It's all chemistry and biology working together.
Oh, absolutely. It's this amazing blend of art and science, tradition, and, new ideas. The world of wine is always changing, always something new to learn.
So what are you most excited to explore next in the world of wine? What's on your, wine bucket list?
Well, I've really been getting into organic and biodynamic wines lately.
Yeah, I've been curious about those.
There's this growing awareness of sustainability, and a real desire to produce wine that are not only delicious, but also good for the planet.
So what does it actually mean for a wine to be organic or biodynamic?
So with organic wines, the grapes are grown without any synthetic pesticides, herbicides, or fertilizers. Biodynamic takes it even further. It's like this whole philosophy of farming, focusing on the whole ecosystem of the vineyard.
So it's not just about what's in the bottle, but how the grapes are grown and the whole approach.
Exactly. And that's what I find so cool about it. It's a move towards a more thoughtful, sustainable way of making wine, respecting the environment, thinking about the health of the soil, the wines. It's really inspiring.
It definitely adds another layer of appreciation for the wine, knowing it was made with that much care. And I bet those wines have a really unique taste.
They really do. And for me, that's what makes exploring them so exciting. They show us a different way of thinking about wine, a more connected way to the land, the seasons, the people who grow the grapes. It's a whole different experience.
It sounds like it. From the vineyard to the glass. And speaking of experiences, this deep dive has been amazing. I feel like I've learned so much about wine, its history, the science behind it, the art of it all.
It's been so great talking about all this with you, and I really hope our listeners feel inspired to, go out there and explore the world of wine for themselves.
Absolutely. So to everyone listening, I encourage you to keep that exploration going. Try a new pairing, check out a local winery, or just, take a moment to really enjoy that next glass of wine.
Cheers to that. And remember, wine is a journey, not a destination. There's always something new waiting to be discovered.
Couldn't have said it better myself. And that's a wrap on another episode of The Deep Dive. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deep.